It should come as no surprise to anyone that Cardano is already exerting an almost magnetic force of attraction on a core of project developers who are at the cutting edge of their fields. It was never actually a hard bet that the project teams willing to answer the challenges of a brand new Haskell based eUTxO system would be among the very most dynamic. But we're now actually seeing the early results of this Cardano high tech innovation magnetism. Ready? Let's go. We're going to discuss how crazy and awesome it is that we have projects like World Mobile in our ecosystem. They're straight flying around in the sky and also doing laser stuff in Africa. Does your other blockchain have laser stuff going on that's actually beneficial for the world? Probably not. We're also going to talk about another DeFi project possibly reaching testnet and some very favorable coverage from Forbes. Here's a new interview with World Mobile CEO Mickey Watkins brought to us by Bullish Dumpling. Check out this video. It only has 386 views. So go check out this video, give her some views because I think it's a great asset to the Cardano ecosystem that we have such a good representative to the Chinese language market. So she also asks some really good no nonsense questions here. At one point, she asks Mickey to sort of dispel this myth that there is not enough cell phone usage on the African continent to justify bringing sort of connectivity to the unconnected. And I'm putting words in her mouth here, but that was the gist of the question. And Mickey straight up says, "Hey, we go to some villages, some rural villages, and we find 55 to 60% smartphone, cell phone penetration." I don't know if he's talking about smartphone penetration or cell phone penetration, but I got the impression it was smartphone penetration because he said, "Hey, there are $35 smartphones available that do the same thing as smartphones that cost hundreds of dollars." And he even went as far as to say it's not shocking to go into one of these villages and find that somebody has an iPhone 12 because the smartphone is such a useful tool if you live in these villages. He says, there's not a lot of street lights and these things have flashlights on them. And even if there's no charging in the village, you can just go to work each day, charge at work, download what you need to when you have connectivity, when you go to work, in like a larger city or settlement or whatever, come home, watch it at night after you've already downloaded it. He also said, a situation exists where some of these villages might have like a small solar setup with a battery, and people might be able to get like half a charge on their cell phone just so they can have a little bit of juice in between going back and forth from work where they can get a full recharge. Once again, this has kind of been a little revelation, I think, from the start of World Mobile being a part of our ecosystem, which goes pretty far back. I mean, they're definitely a mainstay of the Cardano ecosystem at this point. But I think it's been kind of interesting because I would bring this up with people, even people involved in crypto, and this is the first criticism they always had: are there enough people with cell phones, even, but especially smartphones, for this to even be useful? And when I researched those numbers, I came to the same conclusion that there is this misperception of cell phone penetration in sub-Saharan Africa. And of course, it's a different scenario. If we're talking about, places like Cairo, you're going to have, some very different levels of infrastructure build out. But even in sub-Saharan Africa, you've got a much, much higher level of cell phone and smartphone penetration than people would suspect in the developed world. So then she talks about these air nodes. I think we've all seen the videos, World Mobile videos with these air nodes, basically a tower with some uh, telecom stuff on top of it. But I never really heard exactly how effective these towers, these air nodes were. So Mickey lays out, hey, when you've got an air node, you've got a 1 kilometer radius of internet connectivity that this thing can provide, which is pretty big. If you think about a rural village where one of these air nodes would work, that's pretty good, because if you've got a settlement that's larger than a 1 kilometer radius, that is no longer a village. That's pretty big. He also said they can use hops. They can sort of have some. I won't try to even apply any terminology to that because I don't know enough about telecom to say if those are repeaters or what exactly those are, but they can make hops out to 2 kilometers and probably get a good enough internet signal for the users out to 2 kilometers. He also mentioned that the street light and the ability to plug in devices for recharging on these air nodes on these towers is super useful in these villages. He says you could even plug in freezers for things like food storage, and this is a huge utility. If you have some village where there are no street lights, I mean, think about this. We definitely take street lights for granted in the developed world, and you can pretty much do anything at night in the developed world that you could do during the day because we have all these street lights. Super easy to go wherever you want to in a modernized city, but in these villages there are no street lights. So sun goes down, there's no illumination going on. I think I equally do not need to explain how valuable it would be for one of these villages to have a freezer. If they could plug a freezer into the air node for food storage, for things like fish. If you do not currently have that, huge step up, hugely valuable. He also talked about the aerostats, and this was kind of mind blowing. Like, I think I've seen videos of these aerostats. They're the balloons. We've talked about them several times on this channel. They've got these balloons, but he got into specific numbers that kind of surprised me. It sounds like these are way more effective than I would have guessed. These aerostats, he says that World Mobile is going to fly these things. They are flying these things at 300 to 400 meters. They could go as high as 700 meters. He says, and here is the interesting part, they have a radius of 60 to 70 kilometers where users can pick up the signal. So think about that. With the air node, we're talking about 1 kilometers, and they can with hops they can go out to like 2 kilometers. With one of these aerostats, they can go in a 60 to 70 kilometer radius. So also interestingly, this turns out to be, he said, not just 10 times cheaper, but closer to 100 times cheaper than traditional networks. Mickey also talked about other unlicensed off-the-shelf technology and spectrum. They use things like free space optics. We've talked about this before. These are lasers that work in line of sight. So they can hit 20 gigs per second, and they can shoot these things out for 20 kilometers. But like we talked about before, this isn't great when it rains. If you're shooting a laser and a raindrop comes through the laser, that laser is going to get disrupted. Alternatively, they also use TV white space, which is not as fast as free space optics, but great in the rain. And it sounds like it operates just fine, even if obstacles like mountains are in the way. So this to me is pretty amazing. I mean, when we first heard about World Mobile, it was a great mission, obviously, connect the unconnected, and a tremendously promising market. If Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, is going to be the place of greatest growth over the next couple of decades, being the provider of connectivity, man, can you come up with anything more promising? But we didn't have these specifics. Like, nobody was talking about aerostats or lasers, and this is all off the shelf stuff. They're not like inventing the hardware. This hardware already exists. It's just that no one's doing it. No one has boots on the ground in Africa to try to deploy those things. World Mobile does. I think this is a symptom. I'm jokingly calling it a symptom, even though I think it's highly beneficial. This is a symptom of Cardano being such an innovation oriented blockchain. I mean, just the premise of Cardano, you've got an eUTxO system. We're going to take the unspent transaction output system in Bitcoin. And despite the fact that everybody else went to an account balance system with all the global state problems we've talked about so many times in this channel, we're going to take that UTXO system. We're going to invent this thing called eUTxO, or at least innovate in that realm. I don't know who was the first person to talk about eUTxO systems or use that label, but Cardano definitely took that to a new level. They're like, we're going to take this Bitcoin UTXO system and we're going to extend that so it can be used for smart contracts. We're also going to decide to use a functional programming language, Haskell, to do this. This is a huge challenge. These projects like World Mobile who choose Cardano, they're answering a very stiff challenge. This is a very difficult challenge. Like, hey, the entire crypto world is doing things like Ethereum did them, and there are a lot of Solidity developers out there. We're going to do this crazy new innovative eUTxO system thing. We're going to use Haskell. Two huge challenges. But the great part is the projects that are willing to answer that challenge are down for the innovation. They're super down for it. And they're doing stuff like this. They're the aerostat guys, the laser guys. Cardano projects aren't the kind of projects who shy away from innovation. They embrace it. They self-selected for it when they were willing to attack this brand new innovative Cardano system. The most powerful form of selection is self-selection, and because of it, Cardano has a killer lineup of dApps that are just now launching. Yesterday, the dApp account posted this. The time has come. In just 3 days, you'll get the opportunity to witness something the Cardano ecosystem did not have and has never seen before. Let the countdown begin. And then they have a 3-day countdown. Today, of course, the countdown moved to 2 days to go. They said Christmas is coming early to the Cardano community this year. Everything you've been waiting for and beyond will be revealed on Friday. So the sort of like consensus guess is that this is going to be the launch of their testnet, which is, people remark that's pretty, that's pretty brave to launch just before Christmas. Generally that would imply the danger that, the testnet does what it's supposed to do and people expose little bugs, little problems, and then your engineers are busy working on, the holiday to try to fix those problems. But it looks like they're launching something, and it sounds like it's probably a testnet. That means we'll have two pretty big dexes on the testnets, Sunday Swap and ADAX Pro. And I think as soon as we get through this holiday season, I don't know if this is going to be sort of the week between the main holidays here and New Year's, or if it's going to be after January 1st. I think we're going to be seeing this on an almost daily basis, maybe probably several times a week. We're going to see brand new projects launching. A lot of them are going to be these projects we've known about for a long time and are highly anticipated. Some of them will be surprises. We've certainly been surprised lately. I think Muesli Swap came out of nowhere to become sort of the first DEX, up and running with a smart contract on Cardano, and, going stealth and then sort of popping up out of nowhere has its advantages and disadvantages. People were a little wary of Muesli Swap when it first popped up. Is this a rug pull? Are they going to run away with all the funds? What is this? Nobody really knew. But lo and behold, Muesli Swap seems to be running. A lot of people are using it. Not saying that something bad couldn't happen in the future, but that thing seems to be up and running, and it's certainly hard to make a case that it's not the first DEX actually running on Cardano with a smart contract. You get into weird definitions of decentralization and things like that, whether the smart contract they have validating swaps in their DEX is enough decentralization, if your definition of decentralization is some other threshold. But they seem to be the first. I think we're going to see a lot of projects, both some that come out of the blue like that and some that are anticipated, like Sunday Swap and ADAX Pro, and name the other dozen DEXs we know about. But it's going to be a really fun time as soon as we get through the holidays here. I think a lot of these projects are going to come back from the break, and they're going to finish up whatever they had left, and we're going to see all kinds of projects, a lot in DeFi, of course, but a lot of other projects launching all kinds of things. It's going to be a really fun season in Cardano, maybe one of the funnest periods. We can say it's like a number of months, maybe these first 3 months, 6 months of 2022, they might be the funnest we've ever had in Cardano, and I'm looking forward to it. We will all need to be prepared, though, when you've got a bunch of innovative people who've all worked like crazy to create this brand new type of product, say an extended eUTxO DEX, a brand new thing that didn't really exist before. When you've got, how many do we have? A dozen that are all going to be launching. When you've got this many innovative, creative, hardworking people who've just worked like crazy to produce something, and they're all don't get it twisted. They are all going to be competing for the hearts and minds of Cardano users and the sort of like hordes of Cardano noobs who will be coming into the ecosystem with the launch of all these projects. There's going to be a little infighting because it is highly unclear how many of each genre of project will be able to exist. Can we support a dozen dexes? I don't know. Can we support 20? Can we support 6? I have no idea. I don't think anybody really knows. So there's going to be some pretty fierce competition, but this is the way innovation works. I mean, there will be a certain number of projects and a certain number will be successful, and nobody knows what that number is going to be. So be prepared for a little bit of tribalism between these projects and it's pretty fierce infighting. I think for us as consumers of Cardano projects, though, it's going to be kind of fun. We're going to have a lot of choices, and we're going to be able to see a lot of different visions of how each genre of project should work. What should a metaverse on Cardano look like? What should a DEX on Cardano look like? What should a loan platform look like? We're going to see a lot of different things, and we're going to be able to watch this really interesting evolution where the whole ecosystem figures out the best way to do each genre of project. And there's going to be a lot of new genres of projects that are going to become, I believe, there's going to be brand new things that are going to become possible because of the eUTxO architecture that maybe weren't so feasible with account balance systems, or different functions and things like that, at least that are more convenient to create in an eUTxO system. Straight up, this is going to be a fantastic time in the Cardano ecosystem, and I think we're all going to be so happy. And the rest of the world seems to be taking note as well. Here we see Forbes saying Cardano is an Ether rival. I like how they named like the network in our case and the currency in our competitors' case. There, they couldn't match up like network and network, or a currency and currency. But Cardano is an Ether rival that distinguishes itself by being a proof of stake blockchain. ADA, that's Cardano's token, is therefore much more energy efficient. You can now track ADA on Forbes. I mean, this is kind of a straight up attack on Ethereum. I mean, they don't even point out that Ethereum is also going to proof of stake. They're just like, hey, Cardano's proof of stake. Ethereum's not proof of stake. That means that ADA is much more energy efficient than Ethereum, with no mention of the idea that Ethereum is eventually moving to proof of stake. Maybe they have the same questions in their head about whether and when that's actually going to happen in the case of Ethereum. Here it is in all of its blinding white. I can't see a night mode button glory. The Forbes Cardano tracking page. This is some serious mainstream stuff, guys. I think 2022 is going to be a crazy and fantastic year for Cardano, and I will talk to you tomorrow.